Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is a session on digital identifiers, and it represents a launch of a research project that is being funded by the Internet Society Foundation and executed by the Internet Governance Project at Georgia Tech. And I want to begin by introducing Upasana, who is with the Internet Society Foundation, and she will introduce you to the foundation and the way they are supporting research.
Hello, everyone. Good morning to everyone present in Oslo, and good afternoon, good evening to all those joining virtually. Thank you all for gathering here to attend this session about launching this study on governing online identities. As you all know, that the fundamental of our digital interactions these days is essentially built on trust. And a lot of it is dependent on authenticating identity, and this involves several complex technical systems and governance arrangements that are constantly developed in order to assign, prove, and verify identity. And since these identity systems profoundly influence how transparent, secure, and trustworthy the internet can be, I don't think they should be viewed as merely technologies that run in the background, but as a fundamental instrument of public trust. At Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation, our vision is an internet for everyone. And we strongly believe that internet should be open, secure, safe, trustworthy, and community centered. Through our various grant programs at the Internet Society Foundation, we have been championing organizations and change makers who have been working towards this mission. And specifically through our research grant program, we encourage experimentation, innovation, and explorations that can help us deepen our understanding of the critical functions that keep the internet running, and also help ideate various solutions that can strengthen and safeguard the core principles of an open and trustworthy internet. So we've partnered with the Internet Governance Project at Georgia Tech to do exactly that. Uh, Digital identity system, despite the emerging lack of trust in today's digital world, happens to be an understudied area of internet governance, but it has deep implications for privacy, security, and trust in today's internet economy. And amidst this evolving geopolitical landscape, this study, which has been supported by the Internet Society Foundation's research grant, will examine how private actor led organizations and government agencies interact in the global governance landscape to deploy online identity. And our hope with this study is that it can enhance our understanding of the dynamics that are involved and what that means for the broader internet ecosystem. This study particularly looks at Web PKI, LEI, and RPKIs, which will be discussed in greater detail by the presenters today. And while these don't make like eyeball grabbing headlines, they are very critical in shaping some of the most foundational aspects of digital interactions today via trust and safety. Now, why should somebody care about the study, and how does it relate to internet governance? The study takes a closer look at identity regimes across different jurisdictional contexts, and it sheds lights on how the effects of these different policy options within these jurisdictions have implications on the global internet governance landscape. The insights from these different case studies can help us understand why some decisions were made, how they were made, how they were implemented, and perhaps what are some of the outcomes that they produce, which will eventually help us, especially key decision makers in governments and policy, public policy, make decisions on how to allocate resources around investment decisions, etc. Lastly, I would like to close off by saying that the future of internet governance it does not mean to be built solely on laws and regulations. It should be through open, multi-stakeholder models that truly reflect the public interest. And this study tries to go deep into the governance of online identities and does exactly that.
Thank you. Let's go back now to, by the way, that's Kareem Farhat up there. He's in the United States, and he's part of the project. So let me just begin by introducing the basic topic. You see these blobs on the left, and that kind of represents objects in cyberspace, which could be any number of things. It could be servers, it could be machines, it could be devices, it could be people. And in cyberspace, you simply do not know what these things are without some kind of a identification and authentication system. So we're studying that process, and we're looking at it. How do I change the slides like that? Next slide. Okay. So one of the important things about digital identifiers, and they could be, again, for anything, is that they require some kind of system of trust and authority. And the interesting thing about cyberspace is that it is changing the authority relationships in new ways. So where does the authority reside? Who can you trust when you're authenticating online identity? And so that is three different identifier systems that we have chosen to study. One of them is the RPKI, which is about trusting routing announcements. Another is about the WebPKI. And another is about legal entity identifiers, which is a new system of identifiers being developed by a new international organization. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about RPKI. We don't have a lot of time. Obviously, it's a very complex topic, but RPKI is a way of authenticating routing announcements, or actually authenticating who actually is the legitimate holder of an IP address block. And the regional internet registries issue certificates, digital certificates that allow you to authenticate this. And there's been some controversy about how quickly this is being implemented and how effective it is as a method of ensuring routing security. And so one of the things that interests us is the degree to which governments get involved in either requiring or using RPKI. And so one of the things we'll be looking at is a recent U.S. Federal Communications Commission proceeding in which the FCC for a while thought it was going to intervene and start requiring RPKI among internet service providers in the United States, and ultimately backed off and decided it didn't have the authority to do that. But that's one of these ways in which state authority is mixing with the private sector self-governance authority of the internet community, and so we're going to look at that closely. The eIDAS is another area in which we will be looking closely at an intersection of government power and internet community self-governance. This is the web authentication process, and recently the European Commission tries to intervene in this by saying we're going to create a European system of digital certificates, and we will decide who you can trust. And they clashed with the existing platform-based trust hierarchy, primarily centered in the browser manufacturers, that is to say Google, Apple, Microsoft, and so on. And there was a kind of a big political clash over that. And so we're going to be looking at that controversy in detail. And now I'm going to turn it over to, we don't have time to go into all this, organizational identity. I'll turn it over to Vagasha Srivastava, who is a PhD student at Georgia Tech, and she's handling a part of the research on legal identity identifiers.
I and Kareem, my colleague who's online, we are looking at the legal entity identifiers, which is kind of a unique choice in our study because this is one of those organizational entity that was not created by the technical community bottoms up, but it was a top-down approach created by the FSB, the Financial Standards Board, in the G20. So one of the problems that led to the creation of this was identified post-financial crisis, where a lack of transparency and verification needed for financial entities was missing. So there was a asymmetric information problem that led to a market failure, where especially for cross-border transactions, verification and authentication was very, very difficult. So can we move the slides? Yeah. So G20, between 2008 to 2012, G20 convened and they decided that we need an entity identifier norm and regulation, which led to the creation of GLIFE. We can go to the next slide. And LEIs basically fill that gap. They provide a standardization requirement for financial entities so that they can be verified, which go through a list of procedures and check, and then they can participate in local transactions and also cross-border transactions. It's mandatory for cross-border transactions, but not so much for if you want to make domestic, transactions. So they did improve transparency and risk mechanisms. But one of the, so you can see the FSB led to RAC, which led to the creation of GLIFE, which is like a non-profit entity that then leads to the creation of local operating units that issue LEIs in domestic markets. You can go to the next slide. The current status remains that the uptake is huge, one, because it's compulsory for any entity that wants to participate in cross-border transaction. But one of the problems that we observed was that there's a lot of lapse certificate, which basically means that these financial organizations don't have the incentive to keep on renewing, which means that the information that is associated with these identities gets lapsed and therefore it's not current, which then leads to a problem, which is which we began with, that you cannot verify or authenticate these entities with credible information. So LEIs in our cases, and I'll stop just here, which is LEIs in our case reveal something very important, which is global standards need not just regulatory pressure, but user incentives and infrastructural integration for them to keep on going. And that's what we are focusing on within this study. Yep.
Okay. So next, we want to bring up Ben Akinomoye from Nigeria. Ben is not a researcher for us, but he is somebody involved in ICANN from the standpoint of Africa. And so he's been working with digital identifier policy. Ben, can you talk about your perspective on this for about 5 minutes?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can we bring his picture up on the screen, or is he not showing video?
Okay.
There we go. Okay, we got you.
Yes. Is it possible for me to share my slide? I have a more updated slide, if you don't mind. But
I don't know whether the yes, they say you can share your slides.
okay, thank you. Do you see my screen?
No, we just see you, which is perfectly fine. You look great. So
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to have me here. So, I'm going to be talking about the relevance of digital identifier and the governance around it from the perspective of Global South and from someone living in Africa. So the space is really dynamic because of the enormous innovation going on primarily for inclusion, access to services, and all of that. And in order to understand what is happening, at least I know that on the continent, statistics shows that over 500 million people um, are yet to have some form of verifiable identity, legal IDs that they can build access to. So from that perspective, and then there's this huge push for everybody to go online, and there's so much technology optimism, So there has been interesting projects on the continent. First of, when you look out some form of research around this, you're going to find that World Bank has a big project going on, ID for identification for development, and it has like 49 countries already on board, and Rwanda and Nigeria are participants of this, and they're really going hard at this and getting more individuals registered, providing the guidelines so that we can have credible identifications that can work online as well. Then there's this project, ID for Africa. This really goes across the continent, getting different national organizations responsible for either national identifiers like identification schemes to be on board. Then also African Union has their digital transformation strategy. And foundational to this is the identifications, legal identification across different countries. So they give like a roadmap. Also regionally, like ECOWAS, you find something like national biometric ID cards. So all of this, I'm just trying to show you how very rapidly moving these things are. Then on top of this, and you can see the motivation for this is because AFICTA, which is Africa Free Trade Agreement, is hoping to build essentially on digital innovations and how can we do trade across the continent. But the major concern is interoperability of this framework, because different countries talking to different vendors, different to get the identifiers. So for Nigeria, it has been a dynamic. So that's where I at least talk a little bit because that is my country. So there's the National Identification Management, NIMSI, very big, and they are quite achieving a lot. So I also have that number, it's National Identity Number. Just like the previous speaker said, participants must be motivated. But in this case, you can't be, because of various things like security challenges, fraud, and all of that, you are mandated for you to have a bank account to mandatorily register for the national identification number. You must have it. Even to have a phone, to have a SIM card, you must have these numbers. On top of that, for you to have a bank account, you need to have bank verification card. And you can see that over 64 million people as of January 2025 have been registered. So all of this is important and different. So for you to function, you need to have these numbers. But more interestingly, lately, is that the Nigerian government, through the Minister of ICT, just recently talked about digital public infrastructure. This is now bringing everything together. And so there's a framework. I'm going to try and round up quickly. So this is the framework. And if there's anything I'm trying to say in all of this, is that there are multiple players and there's several incentives for them to participate and to make sure, because of the money involved and the various innovation built on this. So now we are beginning to have something called digital identity ecosystems, which is now pulling more things together. And as they build for what's it called now? Technology innovation, to have things happen online. Everybody's being told to go online to do everything, examination online and all of that. So different things are coming up, even bigger than the banks. So what are the concerns for people right now is around privacy. There have been some issues. We have the Privacy Act, cybersecurity laws and all of that. And government surveillance is also huge. In order to understand the dynamic that is playing out, it's just going to keep progressively having more people go online, having different identifiers that can be used. But these are the interesting things we are beginning to see now. Recently, Lagos State, which is the biggest state in terms of economy, just awarded a contract to a UK-based company to manage the health medical records, create a new identifier or patient record. So that's that. Earlier this year also, there was a big Ponzi scheme where a lot of people fall victims and they can't trace the source of these, the guys who run these systems. So all of this is happening. And I think last month, the government said they use AI to identify poor people. So you are wondering which identifier did they use? So all of this going from generally from having ID cards and this ID card actively becoming online digital tools. I'm sure very soon we're going to be seeing things that would identify you either from your IP address and things like that. And I'm sure they're already doing it one way or the other, but it's a really dynamic space. And what everyone is asking for is how to make all these interoperate and give so that we use one rather than using multiple layers of this. So this is what I think is happening right now, and it has great implication for individuals' economic survival. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go back here to our slides, and now we're going to open it up for a Q&A, and apparently we have an online question. Kareem, can you read the question?
I believe Michael is online. He may be able to chime in directly.
Oh, I'm sure he will chime. Go ahead, Michael. Keep it short because we're literally going to get kicked out of here in 4 minutes.
Oh, could the organ?
There you go. Thank you. Michael Plage for the record. I will keep this quick, Milton. 3 points regarding the LEIs. ALAC did a presentation of Puerto Rico where Carla McKenna, who heads Glyph USA, she actually spoke and gave an in-depth presentation on both LEIs and VLEIs. So that is something where I think your group may want to start some of the research. The second point that I wanted to talk about that I think is very unique about Glyph, the speaker talked about it being top down, and it is correct about the original formation. But one of the things that is very unique about Glyph, and Carla, in addition to heading Glyph USA, is also in charge of standards. So most of the work that Glyph has done from a technical standpoint has actually been through technical standards bodies. So I think that's something that is important and should be noted. The one other final comment I just wanted to make real quick, there was talk about the LEIs. So although an LOU will issue an LEI, when that is issued, it is only issued once to that company. Unlike in a domain name system where there's drop catching and people coming back, an LEI once issued can never be issued to any other organization. And if that company does not pay its renewal fees, they have the ability to get recertified and then activate that status, all of which is available from the public database. So I really think Glyph and LEIs and VLEIs is an excellent resource for you to study for this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And yeah, we will, of course, interact with Glyph and its principles, but they are the object of study, not so much the studiers here. So we will be taking an independent perspective on what they do. So let me just wrap up here. Are there any other questions from the floor here? Anybody? All right, so let me just wrap up again. The interesting thing here is that in order to scale in cyberspace, trust and authority in some sense have to be automated, turned into machine-driven algorithms and decision-making. And that means that identifier systems are critical to that. These identifier systems are not unified or integrated across all dimensions, including especially the personal. And so when we speak of online identity, sometimes we are laboring under the assumption that there's going to be one identifier that does anything or everything and anything. And I think what we're learning right off the bat is that different identifier systems are created for different purposes. And while in some ways this is messy, in other ways it really does distribute power and allow for more technical diversity and innovation than if you tried to integrate everything into one bit. So we're in our last 30 seconds here. I really appreciate your attention. Again, this is just the launch of the research project. It really started a few months ago. And we will be doing detailed looks at all three of those identifier systems and trying to understand the underlying political economy of these identifier systems in the context of global authority struggles over cyberspace. Thank you very much.